to order. A couple of administrative functions. First, we have a request from Delegate Williams-Grave and Delegate Greenhall to carry by House Bill 1878 and House Bill 1953 for the day. Entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Those bills will be by for the day. First bill on the agenda, I see Delegate Mullen is in the audience. Delegate Mullen, you have House Bill 1965.
I do. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, House Bill 1965 is an amendment to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act that has gone through the FOIA Council. It was vetted over a course of a year-and-a-half period. It came out by almost unanimous vote of 11-2 in 2021. What this bill does is it seeks to be able to make sure that we don't have bad apples. I know so many in our law enforcement community, of which I've worked for the large majority of my career, have always talked about making sure that we don't have bad apples in our law enforcement. And the way to be able to do that is to make sure that there is, in fact, sun in our law enforcement community. So what this would do is it would make sure that documents related to disciplinary actions are available once there has been a completed disciplinary investigation. Include disciplinary proceedings arising from an officer's conduct, whether such proceedings take place in Virginia or other jurisdictions. Also provides for redaction of personal information related to the officer, including the complainants, the witnesses, and their families to ensure any safety or well-being. One of the main things that we don't want to always make sure of is that there would never be any sort of situation where there would be, stalking. There would not be anything where somebody would be going and trying to go after a member of our law enforcement. But what we would want to make sure of is that where there are founded complaints of wrongdoing, that those pieces of information are made available to the public, because we want to be aware of bad apples that are in our local law enforcement community so we can inspire public trust and confidence in our law enforcement. Creates greater access to information about local government and would allow voters to be able to hold their local elected officials accountable and ensure safety and well-being for our communities. That, Mr. Chairman, is the essence of the bill. As I said, it has been through multiple committees through this body in multiple years, and then through the FOIA Council, of which I know multiple members who are sitting in this committee right now are members itself. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure there are members of this body behind me who would want to speak for and against.
Thank you, Delegate Mullen. Delegate Brewer, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Delegate Mullen, it's honestly my first time looking at the bill. Is this retroactive in any sense, first? And second, would this also apply to elected sheriffs? I'm trying to pull the bill.
So I'll answer your questions sort of in reverse order. It would apply to elected sheriffs. Retroactivity is usually one of those things that we'd have to specify. And so I would certainly say that it would apply to those that are ongoing cases. I would defer to counsel, who I'm looking to right now, but I would defer first to them for questions of retroactivity. But we usually have to specify. Madam Counsel.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Brewer, no, I do not believe so. I would actually defer to Alan Gernhardt as well. He's the executive director of the FOIA Council, and I know that they looked at this bill extensively during the interim, just for him to opine and make sure that I'm not missing anything.
And Mr. Chair, I want to give an answer of no on retroactivity, but I don't want to be held to that and then be incorrect to the delegate. But I believe that is a no, but I don't want to. And there are probably smarter minds who are. Oh, hello. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Come on up. You're better at this than I.
I don't know about that, but thank you. Alan Gernhardt, I'm Executive Director of the FOIA Council and obviously DLS staff as well. Generally, laws don't have retroactive effect unless it is specified in the law. Delegate Mullen's correct about that. I know we've had that question with some other FOIA bills when exemptions have either been added or removed, and people said, well, what about a request made before that? And the answer has always been, you go with the law at the time that was in effect when the request was made. So I would think this also would not have retroactive effect unless you decide to add a clause to give it that effect.
Was I right about sheriffs?
Yeah, I believe it would apply to sheriffs. I wouldn't. There is actually, I think there are 3 lines slightly different than, because the FOIA Council looked at this in 2021 and recommended, that was your House Bill 2196. Yeah, and there are a few differences with this bill. I think it's lines 38, 39, and 92. Because that was an older version, and of course 3706 and 3706.1 have been amended in 2021 and 2022 as well.
Slight differences.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Any other members have questions? Delegate Mullen, let me ask you. It looks like the bill applies to law enforcement disciplinary records related to completed disciplinary investigations. What does that mean exactly? What are we talking about here?
So completed disciplinary investigations would be the investigations that are done by law enforcement themselves. And so the chief law enforcement officer of the jurisdiction most often would be the elected sheriff, or if in those jurisdictions it would be the head of the police department, who would be in charge of those investigations. So completed would be when they have determined that their investigation is completed.
So what would be required to initiate an investigation?
Well, that would be at the discretion of each one of those individual departments, but most often and frequently that could be a citizen complaint, that could be from another member of law enforcement who makes a complaint, that can be a supervisor who might raise a complaint, that could be for any reason that the chief law enforcement officer may raise a complaint. So a completed investigation is something that is defined by the chief law enforcement officer themselves.
So this would apply then to any action against a police officer that would involve discipline, even oral reprimands, public reprimands, anything that's documented within his personnel file, correct? Or her personnel file?
Technical infractions are dealt with in Section E, so oral reprimands would not be included. So
Okay.
Section E contemplates what you're talking about, and so we're not talking about oral reprimands. We're not talking about technical infractions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Brewer.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Mullen, so there's two concerns I have about the bill now that I'm looking at it. First, I think elections are one of the things that solve a lot of ills, and having sheriffs in here, I think, is a slippery slope since they're elected officials. Second, I would be very, very concerned, and anyone who probably works for a Commonwealth might even be concerned, because it's so broad when you talk about any infraction. You know, there could be an officer that's late to work 5 or 6 times, and all of a sudden, you know, someone else is able to use that to obviously be able to use that against that officer for inconsistency, and it could be just minor things. And infractions is a very, very broad term, I would say, but, you know, there's attorneys here much smarter than I that might be able to get at that.
Mr. Chair, I would respond to the delegate by pointing to lines 41 through 42, which defines what technical infractions are, which would in fact, I think, solve the concerns of the delegate, which would mean that somebody being late for work or something like that would not be included in this. It would in fact only be dealing with things that involve deception, misrepresentation, dishonesty, intemperate behavior, those other things that would go towards somebody's investigative enforcement training, supervision, and other reporting responsibilities. It would not involve technical infractions or include instances generally. I would also note and respond to the delegate that elections are wonderful and particularly great for elected sheriffs. And I think elected sheriffs serve an amazing function in the Commonwealth. And one of the best ways for us to be able to have free and informed elections is to be able to know the full information that we have about the operation of those departments. And if we don't know whether or not there are bad apples within the department because that information isn't available to the public, then how are we to know whether or not we should be electing the right people? And this is the way to do that.
Mr. Chair, question for the delegate.
I've got two others in the queue ahead of you, Delegate Wamper. Delegate Price, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the delegate. I remember we had done work on some police reform bills, and one of the ones that I worked on was allowing for police chiefs to talk to each other about personnel records. Say if somebody gets fired from one department and tries to go to another, that those two chiefs could talk. It seems like some of the city attorneys are still a little bit skittish about what can be shared and not if it's discipline action that did not rise to the level of a crime. Would your bill help clarify some of the things by making some of this public information so that city attorneys would not, in my language, be an obstacle to even police chiefs and other entities speaking to each other about the employee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would respond to the delegate. Thank you very much. That is, in fact, the case, that this would be able to assist other law enforcement agencies by being able to provide them with additional information about those who have been fired for cause in other jurisdictions, to be able to share that information freely between jurisdictions when somebody has been let go because of instances where there has been deception, misrepresentation, dishonesty, or intemperate behavior. And something that would be able to assist with that, because that information would be able to be more freely shared.
Delegate Leftwich, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, Delegate Mullen, I'm not aware, but are you aware of any other government employee whose disciplinary record can be FOIA'd?
I don't care to speculate, so I don't know, but I can tell you that I'm not aware of many other government employees who have the ability to be able to kill someone.
Well, let's talk about prosecutors. Let's say a prosecutor is disciplined by the Commonwealth's attorney for the failure to prosecute a case or prosecuting a case poorly or badly. Should we then allow prosecutor records, disciplinary records to be FOIA'd, teachers' records, politicians' records, legislative aides' records? I mean, where do we end?
I think that we have a higher responsibility that law enforcement is given because of the higher responsibility that we give them when they go out there and risk their lives every day to be able to protect us, when they go out there every day to be able to take care of us, that we want to make sure that they are the ones who are going to be able to keep us safe and that there are not bad apples there. And so that if somebody in the registrar's office is a bad apple, it's different than if somebody who is in law enforcement. And I think that that is the reason for this bill.
A follow-up. I mean, I don't disagree that police officers hold a special position of trust, but so do prosecutors. So do teachers. We entrust our children with them when they go to school. So I don't want to engage in a running debate, but I understand your position. Thank you.
Delegate Wamper, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Mullen, I'm looking at lines 48 through 50-ish on your bill, and it says that the law enforcement disciplinary record means any record created, I'm going to go on, or any administrative or judicial proceeding, whether such proceeding takes place in the Commonwealth or in another jurisdiction. And, thinking about the many men and women in law enforcement that have moved into the state and become a law enforcement agent, are you going to require the local law enforcement agency that employs this individual to go and pull records from any other state that's in the United States and have 5 days to respond to that, to the requester, the civilian requester?
I don't think FOIA requires you to be able to go out and pull records from other jurisdictions.
But your bill says that it would in the Commonwealth or in any other jurisdiction. So would it apply to other states' records?
If you have access to those records, then you would have to provide them, just like if you have access to records in other places.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone here in support of the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government. We did work with Delegate Mullen in 2020 and 21 to bring this bill up. We think it goes kind of hand in glove with the decertification process that deals with disciplinary actions that don't rise to the level of what would prompt decertification. And there are other states that are starting to come online with similar types of legislation, so it is a current trend.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Anyone else here in support? Mr. Martin, you're online? Hello, Mr. Martin, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. You wish to offer some testimony with respect to this bill, is that correct?
Yes, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Dominique Martin with New Virginia Majority, and we are in support of this bill. We've been working with the delegate, again, since it's been going through the FOIA process since 2020 and 2021. Much of what's been covered just through the patron's testimony and through the questioning of the committee is covered in what I was going to say. I would just add that this is a big community piece. We'd like to increase the transparency and accountability with our law enforcement. We want to build trust in these areas. And so this would be one of those mechanisms that would increase that trust, just the simple fact of understanding how the decisions are made within the department, what actions are, taken seriously by the department, and then just seeing that police, when they actually do engage in bad behavior, that they are held accountable for that behavior is very important to the community. And so we would hope that you would vote favorably for this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Anyone here in opposition to the bill? Welcome.
Chairman, members of the committee, Elizabeth Hobbs for the Virginia Sheriff's Association. We oppose this bill. It singles law enforcement officers, employees out for treatment that no other government employee has to endure. And it's unfair and overbroad, and we oppose.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, my name is Ken Shipman. I'm with the Virginia State Police, and we oppose this bill. Kind of echoing the comments of Ms. Hobbs, but kind of expanding, this is overly broad, and the wording of the statute, this actually encompasses unfounded as well as founded complaints. So ultimately, you're going to have information that's potentially could be put out to the public on unfounded complaints, which could lead to harassment or a ridicule of this officer. One of the other things concerns, a lot of this information is released. You're looking at privacy concerns as well as safety concerns for the employee as well as the employee's family. I appreciate the efforts that Delegate Mullins has gone through to try to protect some of this information. But let's be honest, anybody can go out to the internet and find almost anything about anyone. And this is evident through the civil unrest of 2020. Numerous troopers as well as local law enforcement officers were doxxed and threatened. So we ask that you do not pass this bill.
Thank you. Anyone else here in opposition? Delegate Mullen, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope that the committee would act favorably on the bill.
Mr. Chair, move to lay this bill on the table.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to lay the bill on the table. All in favor signify by their vote on the voting board. Motion to lay it on the table would pass by a 5-3 margin.
Have a good evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Mullen. Delegate Cordoza, you have House Bill 2394.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I would like to entertain a friendly line amendment to satisfy the concerns that this bill could be used to cover items beyond real estate financial matters, which is not the intent of this legislative request. If I could state the line and the amendment, I would appreciate that.
Go ahead.
All right, so it would be line 329, and it would insert the words real estate between residential and nature.
Okay, entertain a motion to adopt that amendment.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. The bill as amended is now before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just say this is a FOIA amendment, but I will ask for the director of the FMA to come and give a bit of a reasoning why this is needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cordova, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Fort Monroe Authority is tasked as the local redevelopment authority after the base realignment and closure of Fort Monroe. Property reverted to the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the Commonwealth now owns. We've given some to the National Park Service, but we still own about 300 acres of land, 2 million square feet of buildings, and 1 water meter for the entire property. The only way this property is going to be redeveloped is going to be with private developers, and that's what the local redevelopment authority or the Fort Monroe Authority is tasked with doing. As we work with these developers, they will be following our master plan, and they will also be following the Secretary of Interior's standards for historic preservation at the highest standards to make sure that we maintain the National Historic Landmark designation at Fort Monroe. In the course of doing long-term leases, because we're not selling property, in the course of doing long-term leases on these properties, we are requiring financial documents which demonstrate that the developer is capable of doing the work, and quite frankly, we're even requiring guarantees for their work. And so those financial records sometimes involve their personal financial records, and what we have learned is that they may be discoverable under FOIA. This serves as an impediment to a financial developer who's interested in doing our developer who's interested in doing work at Fort Monroe. And so after doing some research through the code, we see where this has become a concern for many agencies and authorities in the Commonwealth. We had, using our attorneys, we drafted language which is mirroring that which is already in the code. We've had some discussions with people responsible for overseeing our open government. They expressed some concerns in an effort to make sure that they understood, and this bill was very clear, it just deals with real estate. And so that's what we added the amendment for, and I appreciate you passing that. I hope it'd be the pleasure of the committee to pass the bill, and if you have any questions, I certainly am ready to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Anyone here in support of the bill, other than who's spoken? Odobviously, someone's in opposition to the bill.
Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government, and I would just want to thank Mr. Oder here for listening to my concerns. And I still think it's written a bit broadly, but I appreciate them making sure that it's clarified that it's just real estate, not inadvertently capturing any other agreements.
Ms. Ryan, let me ask you, and you may be able to answer this as well as anybody, but an industrial development authority or an economic development authority, records such as these, it was within their purview, would those not be protected from release under FOIA?
I believe so. That would probably be, I think it's maybe even the second exemption under the Trade Secrets Act.
Okay.
I mean, Trade Secrets section of FOIA. But,
sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Delegate Rome, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the witness from Monroe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the witness, what legislative precedent is this drawn upon in terms of other authorities or other similar bodies actually having similar authority to do what, or basically having a similar exemption for trade secrets, more or less in this case, regarding real estate?
So this is when I was in the legislature, we would have called this a Christmas tree, and it has been added on to many times. Some of the other ones that are here, which actually have similar legislation, the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity, Tobacco Region Revitalization Commission, the Commercial Space Flight Authority, Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Aviation, Virginia Department of Transportation, Department of Housing and Community Development, and Virginia Housing Development Authority.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the witness in this case then that even though basically the witness is saying this based on existing authority, that it goes to, or based on existing precedent, based on other authorities in this case, I'm having trouble finding in the Christmas tree branch on this where each group was harmed along the way before they asked this. This is a question I raised last week as well. And I'm not certain here that based on existing FOIA that if we did not allow this exemption and a developer in this case had some personal financial issues with it, that the existing FOIA statute would not already cover that exemption in terms of having to black that out. But what the exemption here, if I'm not mistaken, would do is say that nothing from that document can be released whatsoever, or it would be entirely at the discretion of the Fort Monroe Authority here to be able to do that. Is that correct?
I would answer by saying it's the intent is the financial information. And so, in other words, a lease or an easement or other agreements, all of those are discoverable. And in those documents, we're going to say you have to meet certain financial conditions in order to comply with the terms of the lease. And then it's the underlying financial documents which we would review then to make sure that they do comply that we're trying to protect. We actually can write this in the lease. The problem is, after talking with FOIA counsel, that it is not clear whether or not that it would be non-discoverable. And so then what's happened is you ask who's been harmed. Quite frankly, it's the Commonwealth of Virginia that is possibly being harmed in that developers are going to be reluctant to do business, and they've expressed this, with the Fort Monroe Authority if their real estate information or their financial information is going to be discoverable. Again, it's not the lease, not the terms of the lease, and so forth. It's just the underlying financial information that would be guaranteeing their performance.
Speaking to the bill at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Rome, let me see if there's anyone else here. Is there anyone here in opposition to the bill? Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just based on the last comment in particular, the Freedom of Information Act does not exist to comfort residential or commercial developers. It is for the public to have the most amount of access to its government as possible. And the way that I would see this is that while I certainly respect the testimony both from the patron as well as the witness in this case here as well, that when a Christmas tree has too many ornaments sometimes we should look at the tree and ask, why do we have so many ornaments for this? And I'm really skeptical in terms of the need for us to more or less comfort the developer in this simply out of their preference when I don't think there's been an actual demonstration of harm done. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Cordoza, I'll give you the last word.
I would just say this is needed because some information is just private. And I don't think we have freedoms if we don't have privacy. I think that's implied under our Constitution. So I would say that as my last word. And I would hope that that you would look favorably upon this bill.
Thank you, Delegate Cordoza. Bill's before us. Your report.
As amended.
As amended. I have a motion and a second to report the bill as amended. All in favor signify by their vote on the voting board. And close the roll. Bill to report by 5-3 margin. Thank you, Delegate Cordoza.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Delegate Rome, you're here. So why don't we take you up?
All right, so we'll just knock these out back to back. So first we'll start with HB 2006. Mr. Chair and Mr. Chair, we have an amendment to be adopted if council would like to report that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, on line, hold on, it might help if I get the right document. 1 second. On line 83, after debit, strike and on line 83, after checks, insert, comma, and payment through the use of telephonic or similar communications.
Entertain a motion to adopt that amendment.
So moved.
For a second. All in favor? Opposed? Amendment, the bill's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the subcommittee. So HB 2006, this states that any public body making charges for the production of FOIA records shall provide an electronic method of payment if they also provide such electronic payment methods for other services or utilities, unless there is a lack of existing technology to do so. This is an issue that we're having in Prince William County, where some of my constituents are having to drive half hour, 40 minutes to get over to the court building in order to physically, in person, drop off a check, even though Prince William County absolutely has the technology and the ability to do this, where they process other fees, for example. We have, in working with VACO on this and talking back and forth, we've introduced this amendment here to make sure that you can accept payments over the phone. For example, if for some reason you had a software issue where you had a problem in terms of being able to convert this for the public to be able to use it, that we could simply allow this to have phone payment. There are some concerns that were raised in the run-up to committee today, so I wanted to take a minute to address some of those. And so first, in this case, would the locality still be able to collect a processing fee for electronic payment so that basically they're able to cover the cost of the credit card transaction? The answer is yes, based on existing precedent that other localities and municipalities already have. For example, the city of Harrisonburg's water and the town of Leesburg's utilities, those do actually already cover the processing fees for this. Another question that came up here is whether phone payments are included in the wording of the bill, and as emails are not secure. The answer is yes. We now, in this version of it, we do have the phone payments as being an option. And so this will then, next question that came up is, okay, so if will the localities process our ability to charge a fee at the beginning, middle, or end of the FOIA request be affected by this bill? The answer is no. The existing practice of the locality for when they choose to charge that FOIA fee, that will still be consistent. And the bottom line for this is basically saying that among the 24 localities and municipalities that already allow for e-payments, among the localities and municipalities that already charge processing fees for something else, we are simply trying to make it easier for our constituents to pay their filing fee, and that's it. Or their FOIA fee, and that's it.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Brewer.
Question for you, Delegate Rome. So I'm looking down on line 78 of your bill. It says any public body. Maybe council can answer this. Would this be anything outside of localities? Would this be like Joint Commission on Healthcare? Would this be VDP? Would this be any sub-agency of the Commonwealth? For the term public body?
You had asked council, but yeah. I'd be happy to answer.
I'm going to double check really quickly, but I'm pretty sure this is just local bodies.
And, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the delegate that this is intended for local government. As much as I would like to branch out, let's start local and then see how it goes.
Mr. Chairman, question for the delegate.
Delegate Walper.
Mr. Chair, and to Delegate Rome, why wouldn't you just write this bill as any public body that charges for the production of records pursuant to this section may provide an electronic method of payment and end it there?
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the delegate in this case that a permissive bill like this would still not require a county such as Prince William that has the ability to be doing this actively to do the best thing for constituents in that case, which is to make them actually do it. And the other thing, Mr. Chairman, I would recognize on this is that the bill says that if you are already accepting electronic payments for other things, you should also be accepting electronic payments for FOIA fees. And so if you're not already doing that, if you represent a small locality, for example, that's not doing that, then this bill will not apply to you. But for those that it does apply to, you can either do it over the phone or you can do it over an internet transaction.
Any other member have a question for Delegate Rome?
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Coyne.
So what about for localities, for example, their utilities payments, but they outsource that to a third party to collect electronically, but they only handle utilities payments. Would your bill require, because they do one method of payment, to require them to do other collections?
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, what I would tell a delegate in this case is that if they're using a third-party vendor and that website has gone out to the public and basically it's a place where the public can pay that online, then ideally, yes, this bill would be applying to that locality. However, because we understand that there could be conflicts in exactly a situation like this is why we allow that phone payment instead, so that you don't have to necessarily have the interface problem that you might have with a third-party vendor website.
Delegate Rum, let me ask you, your bill is mandatory, it's not permissive. If the locality is accepting electronic payments for basically anything, they're going to have to accept it for FOIA, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct, one way or the other, because the problem is right now, if you've got constituents who have to drive 30, 40 minutes to drop off a check, like my constituents in Haymarket are doing, then at that point, FOIA fees are being used as a deterrent for them to be able to get it, as opposed to covering the actual cost, which is what they're statutorily obligated to be doing in the first place. This is simply meant to make it easier for them to be able to pay their fee.
Delegate Rum, let me ask you, have you considered the practical impact of this in terms of the fact that a lot of local governments choose not to accept or to offer credit card payments because, you know, a person using a credit card has the ability to challenge that transaction?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that is yes, we did think this through, and part of this is the reason we said that if you are currently already using electronic payments, that then at that point, because that system has been established, this would then apply only to those localities.
Okay. So is anyone else here in favor or opposition to it?
Mr. Chairman, Catherine Ford with the Press Association, and we support this bill. We appreciate any effort to improve the FOIA process. Thank you.
Megan Ryan, Coalition for Open Government. We also support the bill, especially as people are using paper checks a lot less often and are doing a lot of their banking on their phones.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm Phyllis Rico from the Virginia Association of Counties. Just a few comments. I thank the patron for working with us and addressing the concerns. We sent this out to finance officers because a concern that I have is that I think this is not a FOIA bill. I think this is a administration of government bill. It in line 78 talks about any public body. In line 80 we talk about such locality, but in any case a FOIA bill usually deals with an open meeting or an open record. This bill tells a locality how they can or cannot accept financial payments, and yet any violation would be subject to the FOIA sections enforcement. So I understand what the patron's trying to do. I think it's in the wrong place and at the wrong time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berry, can you hear me? Mr. Berry, could you turn your mic up just a bit? We can barely hear you.
I'll try to speak up. Is that better?
All right, yes, much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You wish to offer some testimony?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Berry. I have the pleasure of serving in the Office of the Governor as a citizen appointee. However, I'm here today in my personal capacity to support this bill. If the committee will indulge me, I'd like to go ahead and take some time and say that I'm here to support both HB 2006 and 2007. Both will facilitate my work as an appointee and those from the community that I work with on behalf of the governor. One of the earlier speakers mentioned paper checks. This is anecdotal and only for myself, but I think it applies more and more broadly every day. I don't even have any checks. I haven't used a check in years. Many members of the community that I work with in my appointment work don't even have bank accounts. And something like this with a prepaid credit card in cases where they do need to make a phone payment would facilitate the access to information that encourages their work. So again, thank you very much. I'm here in support of both 2006 and 2007, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Ms. Minor, are you online?
No, Mr. Chair, Mr. Berry's the only one online.
Okay, thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Upon recommendation of council, in order to address the concern that came up from VACO, I would recommend that we adopt a one-word amendment between line 78 or line 77, 78 to add any local public body, just as a clarification.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to amend the bill as stated. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Bill's amended. Delegate Price, you have a question.
Yes, more so a statement and a motion at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and say that?
Okay, thank you. One of the things that comes to mind about everyone being able to access FOIA and the right to go through the process is those that might be at home for whatever reason, whether it was an international pandemic or due to a disability. And at this moment, if you have to go down to an office to pay, it is an obstacle, and we have allowed for the receipt of information through email. It would make sense that if we can receive information by email, that we could also pay electronically so that those who are unable to get to the office would be able to participate in this. I appreciate, again, the statement that really led to Delegate Rome being able to help more people be able to access what it is they should have access to, which is the point of FOIA. And so I would move that we report as amended.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Walton.
I don't know if it's a question, but speaking to the motion, I suppose.
You have the floor.
Delegate Rome, I don't have any opposition to allowing localities to take payment for FOIA requests via an electronic means. What I'm worried about is, the way this is written with shall in it. Let's take a case of a locality that may take electronic payment for a certain fee, a DMV fee if they're doing that, or payment of taxes electronically. What if they have a volume that's such where they can justify that decision to provide an electronic means for that, but if it costs them a certain amount of money to employ another vendor to provide this service for a FOIA request separately from that system, it's going to be an unfunded mandate on the local government. And this could be nipped very easily by saying may instead of shall. And this is the number one thing we hear about from localities, particularly from the rural part of the state that don't have billion-dollar budgets every year to work their counties and make their counties operate. Same for you start going smaller towns and cities. Same deal there. And this could be fixed if we just said may. They will be allowed to utilize this technology if it's feasible for them.
Right.
And I really worry about that, particularly from my part of the state. And so I have no opposition to your bill, except for the fact that could happen. I think it's likely to happen.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Delegate Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, so two things. One is that because we already have localities that are currently doing this, they're already accepting FOIA fees. They've basically taken it upon themselves in terms of the may. At the same time, reading the tea leaves, I can also be willing to make an amendment here to make it may, which will then get a larger point out to localities at this point that this is something that the General Assembly is very much encouraging you to do, and that we would then bring that directly back to our locality that Delegate Torian and I represent at least, and we would be able to deal with the local problem that we have, and based on that, I would be willing to make an amendment if the committee would be willing to pass the bill.
Very, very wise move, I would say. Delegate Rome.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to make this permission.
Have a motion and a second to make this a permissive bill rather than a mandatory bill. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Your motion would carry. The bill would be before us as amended.
Move to report as amended.
A motion and a second to report the bill as amended. All in favor signify by their vote on the voting board. Say
again.
Pulled it from the jaws of death. Bill would carry by an 8-0 margin. Delegate Rome, you also have House Bill 2007.
Let's go for two, Mr. Chairman. So HB 2007. I do not believe we have a amendment for this one. I think we're going straight forward as I'm looking at my team. We're good for straightforward, right? Okay, great. So, Mr. Chairman and to members subcommittee, so HB 2007 proposes that all public bodies in the Commonwealth subject to FOIA must publish a written policy on their website clearly outlining the process by which localities calculate the fees for the request, if there are any, such an hourly wage and time incurred by a staff member, as well as the final cost for assessing and searching for the requested documentation. Orange County serves as a prime example for implementing policies on transparency regarding FOIA requests and their costs. And the last thing I'm going to also note on this is that this part of this bill was one that, the larger bill that I had last year to eliminate some and cap other FOIA fees died. And so what we're doing here is I took all that part out of this bill, and this part that's left was in fact a recommendation from the FOIA Advisory Council, and I know Mr. Gernhardt's here as part of that. So what I would just note here is that this is something that we've got an endorsement from the FOIA Advisory Council. I know Delegate Wampler was on the council as well as that, and I think I have found the least offensive part of my last bill that we can put forward and hopefully also all agree on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Rome. Anyone here in support of the bill?
Megan Ryan, yes, we do support the bill. This is something we actually brought forth in 2013, and it didn't work out, so I'm so glad to see it revived. So thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan.
Catherine Ford with the Press Association, and we support the bill.
Thank you.
Steve Rossi, Family Foundation, we support the bill.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone here in opposition to the bill? So online, I think we have Vic Nichols listed. Is he here? Or she? I didn't read. Mr. Berry, I think, has already spoken to
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Delegate Brewer.
Not to cause any harm to the delegates' bill, I'm looking at what the rundown sheet we have here, and it says required and post on its website, but it doesn't say that in the bill. Was that a change at some point, or?
So, Mr. Chairman, what I would tell the delegate here is that because this refers back to that section of code for what is supposed to be written online here, I had actually raised the same question, and I was assured that yes, this will just basically be applying to localities, municipalities posting this on their website.
Thank you.
Bill will be before us.
Move to report as amended.
Motion is second to report the
There
bill.
was no amendment.
Oh.
No amendment.
Sorry, move to report.
Have a motion is second to report the bill. All in favor signify by your vote on the voting board. Close the roll. Bill would pass by a 7-1 margin. Thank you, Delegate Rome. Delegate Taylor, 1844.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I'm here to present HB 1844. It's the Virginia Public Records Act confidentiality of certain archived records. As permanent archival records deposited in the state archives at the Library of Virginia must be open to the public unless otherwise restricted by law. Medical or student records transferred to the archives, however, remain closed per HIPAA or FERPA only if they are deposited in the archives directly by a covered entity, such as a state hospital or educational institution. When individuals share their personal medical or educational information with a state agency or the governor's office, the privacy protection is lost as agencies and the governor's office are not covered entities. Information that an individual shares with government under the expectation it would be private becomes public upon transfer to the state archives. This language change in the confidentiality section of the Virginia Public Records Act would allow the privacy protection for these sensitive records to convey with the records when they are transferred to the archives and remain closed for the same period they are protected when held by a covered entity. In the case of medical records, for example, per HIPAA, these would remain confidential until 50 years following a person's death.
Thank you, Delegate Taylor. Members have a question for Delegate Taylor? Hearing none. Is there anyone here in support of the bill?
Yes, I'm Sandy Treadway. I'm the librarian of Virginia, so the agency head for the Library of Virginia. We strongly support this bill. It would solve a problem that we only became aware of recently. We thought we could keep these records restricted and then discovered we couldn't. So we strongly support this, and the governor's office also supports this.
Thank you. Anyone here in opposition to the bill? Delegate Price, you have a question.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I missed it. Mr. Chairman, and for the delegate, can you give me some examples for what might be classified as educational records? I understand medical, but what might fall under the educational records?
Yes, go ahead.
These would be student transcripts, teachers' comments on papers. The example that I saw most recently was something in a clemency file where someone was asking for a pardon and was laying out the schoolwork they had done while they were in prison, and this was a younger person, and all of that, those records were there. So the file itself, the clemency file, we would make public. It would just be those student records that were enclosed in it.
Thank you. Bill will be before us.
Move to report.
Second.
A motion is second to report the bill. House Bill 1844. All in favor signify by your vote on the voting board.
Mr. Chairman.
Close, yes.
I'm just casting a no vote to keep the conversation alive. Don't mean to really hurt it, but I think we do need to have a little bit more conversation about some of the educational records that I'm not quite comfortable with yet. Okay.
Understand. Bill would report by a 5-1 margin. Thank you, Delegate Taylor. Let's see, who's up? Delegate Bennett Parker, you are here. You have House Bill 2050.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a substitute amendment.
Go ahead.
Sir.
Delegate Bennett Parker, I'm sorry, I'm going to surrender the gavel. I have to go to Commerce and Energy.
We'll miss you, Delegate Campbell. Delegate Bennett Parker, go ahead and proceed with House Bill 2050.
Thank you. I have a substitute amendment to offer that I believe is on LAS.
You reporting an amendment?
A substitute amendment, yes.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of accepting the amendment?
Aye.
All right. It's probably before us. Is it posted on LAS? Thank you. All right. Go ahead, Delegate Bennett Parker.
So first, to explain the amendment, it reverts the bill to the existing code language regarding the notification process for an individual to participate remotely. I realize that's a mouthful. The introduced language around that was intended to simplify the process, but I heard concerns about it, so we've just retained the original language. There's now no change to that. To simplify all that, we're just putting language back the way it was. The substitute makes fewer changes than the introduced bill. So the bill itself expands the flexibility for local advisory bodies made up of volunteers and regional bodies to hold all virtual meetings outside of an emergency, while retaining guardrails and guidelines to ensure public access. It does not apply to the General Assembly. It does not apply to local elected bodies like city councils or boards of supervisors. It does not apply to school boards. It does not apply to planning commissions. It does not apply to boards of architectural review, and it does not apply to boards of zoning appeals. It also does not provide any additional flexibility for state bodies. Who does it apply to? The bill applies to local advisory bodies and regional bodies, such as Campbell County's Litter and Environmental Commission, Carroll County's Litter Task Force and its Recreation Commission, Chesterfield's Park and Rec Advisory Commission, Committee on the Future, Youth Services Board, and Special Education Advisory Committee, Hampton's Athletic Hall of Fame Committee and Citizens Unity Commission, Lynchburg's Martin Luther King Jr. Community Council and Youth Services Citizen Board, Prince George's Clean Community Committee and Senior Citizen Task Force, Prince William's Animal Advisory Committee, Commission on Aging, and so forth, Suffolk's Fine Arts Commission, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, Sister Cities Commission, and last but not least, Wytheville's Recreation Commission and its Tree Advisory Committee. The bill is supported by the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, various Go Virginia regional councils, the ARC of Virginia, the AARP, the League of Women Voters, the Association of Area Agencies on Aging, the Association of Planning District Commissions, and the AAUW, among other groups. The bill is permissive. It is not mandatory. If a local advisory body does not want to hold virtual meetings, they do not have to. If their local governing body doesn't want them to or wants to place additional restrictions on them, they retain that authority. The state law is the ceiling, not the floor. The state law is too low. I was not planning on bringing a bill on a topic this year, but my constituents asked me to because of the challenges they and the advisory boards they are serving on are experiencing with the current law, specifically conversations with the Northern Virginia Aging Network and the ARC about how this current law restricts participation by their members. However, it's not just my constituents asking for this, it is all of ours. As you can tell from the numerous different statewide groups supporting this bill, the current law is not working for so many different constituencies, from business representatives to busy parents who want to serve and to volunteer their time and expertise. Local advisory body members are volunteers, the majority of whom do not even receive mileage reimbursement. Local advisory bodies are struggling to recruit and retain members. Additionally, we've heard from bodies in rural areas like Go Virginia Region 6, which covers the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula, as well as the Southside Planning District Commission representing Brunswick, Halifax, and Mecklenburg, about how electronic meeting flexibility allows them to be more effective and responsive in bringing together their members from across a wide geographic area to foster economic development. The second change this bill makes, which I'll only talk about for a sentence, is to require all public bodies that choose to utilize virtual meetings to adopt those policies by recorded vote annually rather than only once in order to regularly take into account public input. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I hope the subcommittee will support the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. Do we have anyone in the audience in support of House Bill 2050?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott McGarry, Washington Gas. I'm here to say a word in support of the bill for the company and also as an individual in the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, as mentioned by the delegate. I've had experience in providing remote participation to 3 bodies, one in Arlington, our electoral board, number 2 in Loudoun, the Environmental Commission, and number 3 in Prince William County, our Sustainability Commission. And I think that this bill, and this is one of the most impressive jobs I've ever seen a patron do on a bill for several months, provides the opportunity for the business community, citizens to participate. I think it's reasonable and would serve the Commonwealth well and get more people involved in the local government advisory process, which I think is a good thing. So I hope very much that you'll favorably consider recommending reporting. Thanks very much.
Next.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Jared Calfee with AARP Virginia. I think the patron did an excellent job explaining the bill, so I'll just say that we support the legislation and support increasing civic access and participation for folks who may have difficulties participating in person. Thank you.
Hello, Tanya Milling, the ARC of Virginia. Yes, we want to thank the delegate for bringing this forward. We learned so much through COVID about access, and this is an excellent first step in expanding the access that people with disabilities have for participating in public discourse, regardless of their needs. So thank you. We support this bill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Emily Webb with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We're also in support of this legislation. We believe that this additional flexibility will provide more opportunities for business owners and other constituents to participate in these important bodies.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Sarah Taylor with the City of Alexandria. We have over 70 advisory bodies in the City of Alexandria. And while we should probably look at how many we have lots of people who want to participate. We have people who have busy jobs, busy lives, who are elderly, who have disabilities, who want to be part of the civic discourse that our advisory bodies provide in advising council on policy and programs and things that are going on in our community. We appreciate the delegates' dogged efforts to continue to provide access for folks. I also am here in my personal capacity. I serve as a member of the Fairfax Area Disability Services Board. Everyone on our board has an opportunity to participate in every meeting electronically because every member is either a person with a disability or a person who's caring for someone with a disability. So for all of us to sort of have to decide who gets to participate electronically every time, it's a challenge. And I'm not here on behalf of the board, but in my personal capacity. So this is really an opportunity to have more people participate, to be part of the civic discourse, and to advise our local bodies on policies and programs and things that serve all members of our community. So thank you for your consideration.
Afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I'm David Blunt with the Virginia Association of Planning District Commissions, 21 planning district commissions across the state. In addition to thanking Delegate Bennett Parker for her efforts not only this year but last year, I want to thank you all because last year the legislature put a framework in place that I think a lot of work went into by a lot of different stakeholders. And I would offer that this is just a modest change to that framework that you established last year. At the Planning District Commission level, there are a lot of advisory bodies and committees that the PDC staffs. And I know that during the time when the all-virtual meetings were commonplace the past several years, I got a lot of reports from the PDCs about how much more robust their participation in their activities and their meetings were, not only by members of these committees, but also members of the public and stakeholders. So I would also encourage you to adopt this legislation. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I don't have much of a voice left, but Phyllis Rico, Virginia Association of Counties, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Michelle Gowdy with VML, we support the bill.
Do we have any opposition to House Bill 2050?
My fun job for the day. Amy Parent-Savard on behalf of the Virginia Press Association. We do oppose the bill. We worked actually very hard with the delegate last year and a large group of supporters. We think this bill is too soon. It's coming too soon. We just passed the law last year, and it actually didn't take effect until September 1st. So it's only been in effect for about 4 months. We also think it sets up a lot of disparities between state bodies, local bodies, and regional bodies. Right now, the way that it is, it's 2 or 25% for all Zoom meetings, and we thought that was a fair way to go. That provides to ensure that people can still be able to participate in person, which we know are the best kinds of meetings for people and for citizens to participate with, especially folks like reporters being able to come and cover meetings. We like that in-person piece being important. I think we just think it goes a lot further than we talked about today. And so I think we oppose the idea, and we would like to keep the law the way it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government, and we too oppose the bill. We have expanded the opportunities for individuals to participate remotely as individuals or as the group every year for the past 3 years. Every year, those bills went through the FOIA Council. This one did not. But as we have expanded these opportunities, the trade-off has always been, okay, we're going to take advantage of the technology and start to advance this, but the trade-off is there've got to be some limits. And back when we started doing electronic meetings, this was years ago, and I was part of it, the notion was state agencies need this flexibility because state agencies have members everywhere. And so you have the physical problem of getting everybody in the room. We said we didn't want to do local bodies because we still, at the time, the FOIA Council took the policy position that in-person meetings are better. We get things done better. They serve as a place, a marketplace of ideas for people who come to those meetings. And then over the years, we had to adjust for regional public bodies. So this bill has completely flipped that policy notion. We are now saying state agencies are still limited to this 25% or 2 times a year, but local advisory bodies, now we're going to be able to adopt a policy that allows them to meet every single time online. If they want to have that policy to meet every single time online, they can under this bill. That is a complete reversal of where we've been for a decade and a half. And to be clear, when we're talking about local advisory bodies, they sound innocent and innocuous and just, gee whiz, this is helpful. These are advisory bodies, meaning they're advising the public body that created them. So they have a great deal of influence. So their deliberations need to be to the same public that the public body serves. This bill also extends to regional public bodies. So we're talking about regional jail authorities. We're talking about the transportation districts, ones that make huge policy decisions, and they could make a policy that allows them to meet electronically every single time. So we do oppose the bill.
Madam Chairman and members of the subcommittee, Steve Rossi, Family Foundation, and for all the reasons stated by my 2 colleagues here, we oppose the bill as well. Thank you.
Before we take online testimony, Delegate Bennett Parker, I know we talked a little bit earlier about this, and the big concern I think I raised is exactly the conversation we have. Those in the online queue, for those who would like to testify, if you could please turn on your cameras, that's prerogative of the chair, but this brings up a very important point. For those such as myself, whether we would be for or in opposition, anybody could change the name of their Zoom at any time and be any one of us without a camera on. And that's a very, very big concern I've always had a reservation about. So with that, I'm going to go to online testimony. At first, I will take Anita Ameyer from AAUW.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Anita Amer, and I am a member of the Wytheville branch of the American Association of University Women. I serve as the Southwest District representative to our state board, and AAUW is a national organization of nonpartisan with flexibility, that volunteer organization promotes gender equity for women and girls. Are you able to hear me? Because my screen is fluctuating.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. We strongly support HB 2050, which would allow flexibility for electronic meetings. We've all heard, and we lived through the pandemic and became familiar with the electronic meetings, which allowed a robust public participation. By using such meetings, we also enabled low-income persons and disabled persons to participate by eliminating barriers such as transportation. I live in rural Virginia. Rural Virginia does not have easy access to public transportation, which is readily available in the cities. Childcare is also another barrier in this region. So our organization and myself vote, please continue to ensure access to all Virginians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ameyer. Next up in the queue, we have Joanne Collins with the Virginia Grassroots Coalition.
Good afternoon. My name is Joanne Collins. I live in Reston, which is within Fairfax County. I'm here today on behalf of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. One of our priority bills this session is HB 2050. I also serve on an advisory commission in Fairfax County, but I'm here as my personal capacity. I just want to note that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, they meet weekly during the General Assembly. to review specific legislation and consider positions on legislation that impacts our county. At the January 20th, 2023 public meeting of the Fairfax Board of Supervisors Legislative Committee, House Bill 2050 was specifically addressed and received the support of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your consideration on HB 2050, and I hope that you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up in the queue, we have on House Bill 2050, we have Connor Cummings.
Okay. My name is Connor Cummings. I am proud to be autistic. I want to thank you all for assisting in passing the law so that people with disabilities can participate in boards and commissions virtually. Now let's take it one more step. Let's ensure not only can we vote virtually, but we are included in the quorum, and everyone needs to join virtually. Now, meeting rules have a certain amount of people who must be in attendance in person, but that doesn't work for all of us. This is a simple request. Let's change that so that the new quorum rule is people with attendance, either in person or virtual, are included in the quorum. We also need to include parents and caregivers of people with disabilities. We are a team. They support us. They should be able to participate, vote, and count as a quorum 100% of the time, either in person or virtual. Today is a perfect example for me, as it was too much for me to travel to Richmond, park, and walk through security, be in crowds, and speak. I have a busy week, and my insides cannot do any more. Yet, I want to tell you how important this is to me and others like me. I want to do as much as I can in person, but it doesn't always work. I hope you will accept me for who I am in my struggle and good days and allow me to speak virtually as I want to be heard. Please and thank you, Connor.
Thank you. Next up in the queue, we have Mr. Robert Eifert with the Northern Virginia Aging Network.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bob Eifert, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Northern Virginia Aging Network in strong support of Delegate Bennett Parker's bill. NVAN is comprised of the Commissions on Aging, Area Agencies on Aging, service providers, and advocacy organizations for older adults from the Alexandria, Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William areas. For all the reasons you've heard from the supporters of this bill this afternoon, we urge you to support this legislation and to vote for inclusion and flexibility for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes online testimony. Are there any questions for? Sure, quickly.
Sorry to impose on the subcommittee. I just want to add one thing. If it was said, I'm sorry, I haven't heard it said. This doesn't preclude, like we're doing now, having in person, but also having video hookups for people to contribute their thoughts at the meetings and to participate in the meeting that way. So I just want to say that's still an option for people who can't attend these meetings. It's just that they would have to have people in person as well.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions or comments on House Bill 2050?
Madam Chair.
Delegate Price?
Yeah, thank you. Because I had a statement, I just want to clarify the last comment that was made. So, and want to thank Connor for his testimony. Would Connor count or not count toward the quorum based off the last comment that was made that the meeting could still happen with the hybrid? And you can let him answer. You don't. I don't. Right. If you could come up. No, I just want to clarify because you're saying that a hybrid meeting could still happen, right? Like you're saying, like what we're doing now. And that's my question. Would Connor's participation count toward the quorum in what you're stating is allowed to happen now?
I don't know if we're talking about that. I was just talking about the citizens' participation, not the board members.
No, I definitely, I mean, I hear you, but if Connor was on a board, would Connor count towards the quorum in a hybrid setting as like, because he just said he wanted to count towards quorum, you know, because he's.
Let's let Delegate Bennett Parker, it's her bill, let's let her answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Delegate Price for the question. So I think there's two separate issues being addressed here. The first, to Delegate Price's question about whether Connor would count towards quorum in a hybrid meeting, he would not. And so one of the unintended consequences of this bill that we've heard from the ARC is that people with disabilities who are serving on these boards, because the local boards are struggling to reach in-person quorums, folks with disabilities and their caretakers are actually feeling as though they need to resign because they don't count towards quorum and are counting, sort of, they're holding the body back from reaching quorum, and I think that's an absolutely horrible unintended consequence of this legislation. To the gentleman's comments about the ability of the public to testify remotely, it is true that the code does not prohibit that. However, I would say that there is a lot of logistical and financial constraints with that, particularly for these local advisory body meetings. These meetings are happening, our school board advisory committee meetings are happening in the lobby of the school where it's not set up for streaming or it's not set up for remote testimony. Those things are made easier when the meeting is all virtual.
Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. You did a lot of work on this bill, and I know there's still a lot of questions out there. I think as we move into a virtual world, I'm sure we will have way more questions going forward. Do we have any other questions or comments or motions from the committee?
Madam Chair, I have a motion, comments.
Madam Chair, I have a comment.
Delegate Coiner.
I'm happy to hold my,
Delegate Torian, go ahead.
If Delegate Torian has a comment.
Madam Chair, thank you. My comment is as follows. When we were deep into COVID-19, virtually all of our meetings were virtual. People were not meeting in person. We were holding meetings, taking care of the business, all virtually. So now what we want to say, we want a limitation on that. We don't want to give people access. But when health concerns were upon us, we met virtually. The General Assembly met that way and had a quorum. I don't understand the opposition.
Delegate Coiner.
Madam Chair, comments, and then I have a motion.
Go ahead.
I have spoken with the patron about the concerns, and I am frustrated over the imposing of a complete virtual setting for all meetings, regardless of needs of citizens, versus addressing those who do need accommodations and needs to count towards quorum for persons with disabilities or medical needs. I do believe there is a way to serve those who need to be able to participate and count towards quorum in that regard without it making all of our meetings all virtual. Yes, this body did function in all virtual, not because it was the best way to do the public's business. I think we've all seen that being in person, we do better work, working together, sitting in the hallway and having face-to-face meetings. Our citizens having served on a school board, who serve on those advisory committees, come from different districts who have different ideas, and when they're forced everybody be in a room and try to work on things, we get better outcomes when we're in person and able to work through that. The laws that we passed last time did permit exceptions to allow to participate. I think there's room in regards to quorum requirements so that folks count who have certain needs, but I do not believe that it is transparent and in the public's best interest. I would say if you were in this body in the majority during all virtual, you probably felt pretty good about how the public's business was being done. I can tell you not every committee in this body, when it was all virtual, treated those who were in the minority and their folks testifying in virtual Zoom. You had no idea if people were in waiting rooms. You had no idea if your people were going to be given an opportunity to testify, and you couldn't see who was waiting around because who was controlling some of those Zoom accounts. So it wasn't as transparent, and I realize you may not have been a part of one of those subcommittees that happened in, but it makes a big difference. So, Madam Chair, I would move to lay this bill on the table.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please prepare to vote on House Bill 2050. That bill is laid on the table with a vote of 4-3. Delegate Bennett Parker, I know you worked really hard on this bill. Maybe work with maybe the FOIA Council and see where we can get this on posture. Thank you. Last but not least, we have House Bill 2161. Delegate Corner, are you going to handle this for Delegate Williams, I understand?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have an amendment.
Can I get a motion to move the amendment?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The bill is probably before us. Delegate Coiner.
Madam Chair, this bill is not new to our committee work. If you may recall, last year there was a bill that brought forward a work group to provide resolution in this area of public notice in regards to land use issues. That work group did meet. They worked very hard. They came to resolution. And so this is a recommendation from that work of the Code Commission. I do know that there are folks here who would like to speak to the bill.
Any of those who would like to come forward to speak in support of House Bill 2161?
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Amy Parent-Sabert on behalf of the Virginia Press Association. We were one of the members of the group that worked on the local government public notices with the Code Commission Task Force, and we were pleased to bring this consensus bill forward. The bill is a long bill, as you can see, but we really worked hard to come up with some streamlining of, especially of the timelines for public notices. So what we've realized is that throughout the decades, to be honest, every time we've gone to anything and put any public notices or public hearings, we have just kind of picked numbers as to what the notice would be. It could be 7 days, could be 5 days, could be 10. So we did what we did was streamline everything. Everything that had a one-time hearing was going to now be 7 days. Everything that was 2 times, it was 2 successive weeks, appearing no more than 14 days, and then 3 successive weeks, 21 days. And so we went through the code with great help from folks at Legislative Services to make all those amendments, which is why the bill looks long. So those were some really big changes that we really are pleased with. The second part, which I will probably leave a little bit more to Michelle, who's behind me, was recommendations from the Virginia Government Attorneys Association, as well as VML and VACO, and the home builders worked on, which is changing some of the language in the zoning and planning pieces, which dealt with descriptive summaries and general usage, which were really broad terms. The lawyers had some concerns about that, and what they were finding is that they were putting really long notices in the paper to make sure they got everything in there, so long that it really made it difficult for citizens to even see what was there. So instead, we have shortened that out, and so now you have to put the plot number and address, acreage if it's over 25 plots, so you get a sense of how big that project is. They have to have a link on there to go to the locality's website to be able to see all the plans and all the information's there. They also have to have it listed where you can go see it in person. So that'll all be in that public notice, and so that's there so that people who don't have online access can go through, look at the plans like they can now. That was important to us to make sure that was there. The other thing is we are actually going to keep the work group going. We've got some more work to do, and if this is successful this year, we'd like to kind of continue this through the process and look at regional public bodies and as well as state bodies and their notice timelines. So we appreciate this, and we hope that you will support the bill.
Michelle Gowdy from VML. I'm speaking on behalf of VACO as well. We did work really hard on this bill, and I want to thank the Press Association and the Coalition on Open Government for all their help with it. One of the things that was really important for us is in local government attorneys, when you put in the ads, if you miss one tax map number or anything minor, you have to redo the ad. And so it actually delays projects in the locality, housing projects, other commercial projects. So this was really an attempt to try to make sure those minor mistakes can be fixed on the back end at the locality rather than in the newspaper ad. So we thank you for your support.
So the bill's before us.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Roan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding, reading this, and I usually break with VPA on one a year. I don't think it's going to be this one, as reported to our legislator, that this is not going to result in not publishing these notices in physical copy newspapers, as has been presented over and over and over again in this body. We'll still be doing it. It is simply streamlined, and that for those of us who really care about this sort of thing, we should not be afraid of this bill. Okay. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make a motion at the appropriate time.
One more. Oh, you didn't do opposition. Okay, yeah. Please come forward. I'm sorry.
So I have a comment statement to read in behalf of somebody else who wasn't able to make it here today. And so I'll just go ahead with that. This bill, like HB 1473, puts obstacles in front of hardworking tax-paying Virginians to easily access what is being proposed in their communities in terms of development so that they can have a voice in what impact it will have on their lives and that of the community. If our legislature believes in transparency, then why support giving zoning the option of a tax map? No, or an address of the property, tax map number, or an address of the property. Of course it should be an address. Why remove the description from easy access? The information should be clear and readily accessible to everyone. And why would any representative want to remove the requirement of notices when there are proposed amendments concerning general usage, density, and other data regarding to density as the proposal states, when these elements will directly affect everyone in the community from traffic, school, capacity, safety, pollution, effect on environment, size of support services, etc. There is no monetary savings when those that will be impacted by development have less input into what is being considered in their own community due to removing or lessening full transparency. Zoning board members are not elected, but their decisions can impact a community for years to come, sometimes transforming communities, whether good or bad, as a result of the decision of only a few appointed people who may only be receiving one perspective on upcoming projects, usually all in favor of the petitioner. Isn't it your obligation to serve the entire community and give everyone the best chance to participate in these serious decisions with special consideration to those living in the community that can best contribute to the best decision for development? Please don't cut them out. Rather than putting up obstacles to transparency, how do we make it even easier for them to receive the information on the original proposal, all the subsequent proposed amendments, and easy access to the zoning board, even if they can't attend the meeting? Thank you for your consideration.
Ma'am, would you mind, for the record, stating your name and for whom you were speaking?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. My name is Lindsay Zaya, and the comment is from Martha Cohen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition?
No, sir, but I did want to clarify that I think the amendments that were offered by Delegate Coiner were maybe in response to some of that. So this happened, we had the Senate version, and so there's a couple environmental groups that came to us, and the amendments that you had that were offered here unstruck some of the language I think people had some problems with. There was some language that was unstruck that was talking about the second hearing that would be held for general usage. That was sort of inadvertently struck, and so that was unstruck, and then it also says that the information has to be posted and be available for examination as well. So I think that might have been some of the piece. I'm not sure if that answers all of her concerns, but that concern was raised to us, and that's the amendment that we had today to fix some of that. So I want to say that I think we also support full transparency, and we weren't supporting something that made it harder for folks to see things. So thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Move to report as amended, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to report the bill as amended. All in favor signify by your vote on the voting board.
What was that? Oh, I did, and they're in the majority.
And close the roll. The bill will report 7-0 as amended. I think that completes our business. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.